Lovely to see your face, and I'm so honored to have you on What's Your Poison.
Sure.
Before we get started, I have to ask you, what did you bring as your vice for the night, or did you bring something?
Is this the kind of confessional you want, John? Is this what you want?
Hey!
No, this is not even my vice. This is a confiscation that I did earlier. I'm running a neighborhood watch.
Huh.
This is stuff that I picked up on the job.
You are a very serious man.
Yeah, a citizen about my business.
What be your vice? Is that it right there?
Yeah, I smoke a bit, I drink a bit. Why, the question is, why is a vice crazy? What's all this vice business?
No, so let me give you some back catalog here. What normally happens is we actually drink whiskey on the show. So I've got a bottle of whiskey here. It's called What's Your Poison, for the reason that we start by exploring what are the bad things that people like, and we partake in them on this show.
You should have told me. I should have just brought some bread.
Is that you?
A good loaf. A good loaf always gets me in trouble.
The good loaf. Well, I'm going to pour myself a whiskey then, if that doesn't offend you in any shape or form. Do you not drink, or I mean, I appreciate your artistry, but you're being very cryptic, so I don't really know how to respond.
It makes my face swell up.
Whiskey does.
Alcohol in general.
Oh.
It balloons
Cheers
me.
to me. Tato, seriously, I've been very excited to chat to you. You are such an enigma to me. I work in this industry and I work with a lot of people, and I do not cross paths with you if that's not blatantly obvious. You work in your own circles. You are an artist that confuses, confounds, and inspires. You always seem to be doing something interesting, moving in your own waves, living up to your name as a ghost who is always up to something. I love that about you. A mysterious artist to me.
I'm saying there's nothing mysterious about it. All the work has been there's been shows in Joburg, there's been videos of it. There's, you know what I mean? The music's been in Joburg. I've been in Joburg. We've been doing live, what's it called? Little stream casts, you know what I mean? From live locations in Joburg. We've been in Joburg.
Okay, cool. I mean, that's awesome. Tell me about your life.
I'm just going against the idea of being ghostly or shadowy or enigmatic or mysterious. I think it just shows how big and vast the music industry is.
This is a really weird question, but what is the intention behind your work? Because you always surprise. What is the thing you're trying to create?
I guess it's the answer is different for different things. Yeah, for each different thing, there's a different answer for what the reason is or what is tried to be created.
But what is the path that you're on? There is a,
for example,
there is a journey that is the Spoek Mathambo journey that is, I mean, fucking diverse and interesting, but with the same intention.
A big project I'm working on and is coming to a close now is a documentary about Isaac Mutant and Dukum.
Oh, wow.
And, the question is,
has anyone told the story of Dukum before?
Yeah, I mean, journalists and whatnot.
But I mean, in a real and meaningful way, other than a story in a publication.
I don't know. This is really about Isaac and things that he finds important. It's more from Isaac's viewpoint. But the reasoning behind doing that documentary and the reasoning behind doing some of my very personal music projects are very different. And some reasons are purely aesthetic, some are nostalgic, some are personal satisfaction, some are achieving challenges, you know what I mean? Like just personal challenges of wanting to do something. Some is like a theoretical bending of things, trying to break the forms into new shapes.
Why are you telling the story of Isaac?
Well, it's the story of the discussion of colored identity through Isaac's eyes, but also through different spaces in the Western Cape and different like phenomenon. Why? Is because I find it to be a very crazy and interesting South African phenomenon that has been engaged with in really political sense and engaged with in academic sense, but I don't think in its centrality to South African hip hop, it hasn't been expressed. Valid identity, that is, it's like in terms of South African hip hop history and Cape Town as the starting point, genesis point is massive, and that's where Isaac's story comes from Mitchell's Plain,
Okay.
The birthplace of SA hip hop. So it was a very interesting story, but it's taken long to make the documentary.
So this is what I'm saying. With respect, I have only respect and love for you, right? You're giving me a bit of a hard time here, but Isaac's story is phenomenal. Like what he did for hip hop culture is incredible. And I don't believe that people know who he is or where he's been. You say that someone's written some articles about him. I dare many people to answer who's Isaac Mutant from Dukum in South Africa at all, even if they're in the hip hop culture. So I feel very strongly that what a brilliant idea to be telling this powerful story that's had a massive impact on a lot of people. And I mean, a definitive story. But I don't think that many people know who he is. I don't think he's the icon he ought to be.
I don't think that's why you make a film about someone because they're famous. I think you make film because the story is interesting.
Yeah.
So for me, he gives an interesting vantage point on a subject that's very deep, very deep and central to a lot of mad stuff about South Africa's history.
How has he? Because I know, I mean, from the old days working with Cybot and Marcus and Wadi and everybody, I know that a lot of those guys were also inspired by him. Why is he important to you?
I met Isaac in 2003 when I'd moved and lived in Cape Town for a bit, and I knew him from, I think, the groups Plain Madness and Colored Ass Crooks, Kak. And he was. I threw a gig at the Armchair Theatre, and he was an MC that I invited to perform there. So
hold on a second. 2003, was this when Gil Hockman ran the Armchair Theatre?
I can't remember.
Okay, that's who would have booked you. I can imagine it. All right, carry on.
Yeah, no. So it wasn't even a booking thing; it was a promotion. So I was. It was a charity gig that we're putting on, a hip hop charity gig called Peanut Butter Karma. Isaac Mutant was on the bill. And I had, as a Johannesburg person who hadn't heard Afrikaans hip hop until moving to Cape Town and hadn't engaged with the idea of Afrikaans as something that I even wanted to listen to, actually hating Afrikaans for most of my life until spending time in colored community, spending time in Mitchell's Plain and experiencing it through experiencing the richness, the beauty, the flavor, and through hip hop that I love. And Isaac Mutant was a figure that I came across along Mr. Devious, along, many people. And since then, a lot has happened. And yeah, I found it to be a very epic, beautiful story. But it's the same as I did a documentary, Future Sound of Mzansi. And
yes,
there's a DJ Mojava. And, he also had a very big story in South African music that hadn't really been told up until the film. And it was important to do. So, we did it. And that's kind of the same reasoning for doing this.
I love that you're doing this. Do you think... I mean, isn't one of the big issues with South Africa and Africa is that there are some incredible stories that are usually not told. Like you're being proactive about telling some very powerful stories that have never been told.
I think this is a really cool time for content. There's so much independent content creation from all directions and very stylish, and from DIY to, you know, Hollywood, you know, like things like Netflix make that global audience very achievable for a lot of South African productions. So I think cool stuff is happening. I'm psyched.
I'm psyched as well. I'm glad someone's doing these things, because
I spent the day writing ideas. So I think there's a lot of space to tell our stories, and there's big interest. It's just to tell them in ways that are, you know, not the typical macabre, like, oh, South Africa, like, oh, shame.
But I mean, even and now with our artists like the Shoma Jozis, the Spoek Mathambos, the Moonchild Sanellis, who are actually finding their place in the world and having these artists work with them as opposed to just steal from them. I think there is so much unmined stuff. That's why I didn't know you were doing this documentary on Isaac Newton, but it seems like there's a gold mine of amazing stuff there.
Yeah, it was also really cool to see Isaac had momentum building with performing and touring.
What now?
Before, like a couple of years
He's
ago.
still performing now.
This last couple of years, this last 2 years has been a mess. I don't think anyone's now.
No, I didn't mean now. I just meant is he still active?
Now.
You mean now?
Not like now. But I think he's got he's rapping. Yeah, he's rapping like crazy. We're even doing some tracks together. We're trying to make some tracks to release alongside the release of the film.
Do you still work with Wadi or the Antwoord stuff and all that? Because one thing I do remember was during the sort of heyday of them, there was a lot of criticism that Isaac. I mean, I don't know the real stories, that Isaac felt that he was sort of bastardizing what he was doing and stealing what he was doing and taking it off to the world. Or was there more of a culture of respect between the two, and that it's more of a tribute?
Isaac doesn't really. I don't know. He talks about it in the film, but he has an interesting perspective on it, and it's a personal relationship between the two of them. I have absolutely no relationship with the.
But do you have an opinion? Is my question.
Opinion on what? On what Isaac's opinion is on his relationship with his dude. You know what I mean? They're buddies, so I've got no opinion.
Oh, are they friends now still?
Yeah. As far as I know.
Okay, we don't have to talk about Isaac. Let's talk about you. You've come a very, very odd path for a South African musician, growing up in Soweto, ending up in Sweden, and everything you've done. And again, totally from a fan and an outsider, you always breaking ground. You know, I remember you getting signed to SUBPOP. I remember each move you made, because it's very unconventional.
I'd say, interestingly, the journey started from interest to be a writer and a music journalist. And I started a zine when I was in high school.
What was it called?
It was called Levitation Magazine.
Nice.
Yeah, like in Standard 8, that's another whole story. Anyway, so I started printing up zines in the photocopy room at school for free. Passed them around at like the Market Theatre gigs, at hip-hop gigs, like Ben Sharpa was performing with Isaac Chokwe and Jonesy D. And, you know, I was in high school and in awe of this South African underground hip-hop scene. And I created this kind of youth culture publication that explored different forms of communication and was open format as far as had people contributing as well. So that was the first issue, just printed out.
Do you still have any copies of them?
Yeah, of course. Then the next issue got a sponsorship from the club Reality in Joburg, Insanity Reality, which was a whole, they supported it for that issue. Then the issue after that, we did independently with the artist Faith 47 in Cape Town. We stayed together and we worked on the magazine, and it just grew and blossomed. And my interest was in, just from a real fan perspective and having so much love. And I think that is what has informed my journey. And what has seemed unconventional, but that's obviously why I'd make these documentaries. That's the fandom, or a project like Phantasma, to be able to work with Vugaz Tate on one side and Maskandi legend, DJ Spoek on another side, Andre Geldenhuys, like I was into the machinery group that they had, and to put it together and flip it with, my ideas and my styles, like that comes from a fan perspective. So the journey's been, like that, just keep growing, but from a love and a curiosity. And lots of connection points. That's what I mean about being a fan.
How did you end up living overseas and getting signed to Sub Pop?
How did that deal happen? I released Mshinwam. Mshinwam in 2010 came out on a label called BBE, which since I was in high school, I like knew and loved what BBE. They released like J Dilla, and they released like BBE. BBE was doing bits and is still doing bits in their way. They got in contacted and they wanted to release an album. I naively signed the worst contract of my life, but that was my school fees. I paid for that.
What, they paid you in advance, but then...
they paid fuck all, and I wanted to give them another album after that for fuck all.
But you just wanted to be on J Dilla's label.
I was just like, someone wants.
How old were you?
Someone. I was old enough not to do something so stupid. I didn't do the due diligence, and I paid for it. Then somebody from Sub Pop heard the music from there, I think Tony or someone, and they got in contact and they had to buy me out of the stupid deal.
And then you were with Sub Pop, and then how did that go?
It was a sick experience. It was a really good experience. Also creatively, I think that's what the journey's really been interesting to strive for growth and to stand at the edge of things and for things to be quite uncomfortable and to try things and to fall and to fail and to get up, and that was really like, I'm saying that it wasn't an experience where I did what I usually do and then I packaged it nicely for them. It was full growth experience of, I learned studio stuff. I learned a different kind of musicality. It was like a very awesome experience.
Well, and was the label hands-on with what you were doing, or were you just immersing yourself in a whole new world of having access to be able to work with different artists and different studios?
The label was hands-on with connecting the music to people, but they weren't really hands-on with the music itself. Like for me to link up with Zach Hill on drums for Dog to Bone, that was through Steve from Sacramento, who, being Sacramento musician from 90s, he's linked with like a whole lot of different people. So the universe just grew on the project.
Okay, so here we go. What did you learn from that experience that you've brought back to your hometown? I mean, because I know from my experience, it was a long time ago, but I was in a band that toured the world for like 6 or 7 years, and coming back here, I realized very quickly that a lot of the mentality and the boundaries are quite sort of contained, and you when you see how the rest of the world works, it gives you a lot to bring back.
Yeah, well, what I think, before we talk about that, it's not really about a coming back thing, but I think before going anywhere, I've always been quite disappointed that South African musicians see themselves as South African musicians, and that's changing so much more with the new generation, where they are saying, no,
They don't give a shit.
Yeah, we want to do this for the world, whatever.
Yeah.
But it sucks for me that a lot of stuff was insular, if not in the presentation, then in who they'd communicate with. You know what I mean? Like the promoters, the agents, the what that they'd contact, get out of the borders and try see what's happening even in our neighboring states,
It is a weird thing that South Africa is isolated. In Africa, where everyone is touring and collaborating, but here in South Africa, we are the whole world to our own
it's
market.
A weird thing. I think it's apartheid hangover.
You think that's what it is?
That there wasn't the free
connection.
Yeah.
So what about your upbringing that made you want to expand and find the rest of the world and treat your music globally? Because that seems to be...
It was learning about musicians like Kipi Mwekezi, amazing, revolutionary saxophonist in the...
And another something, can I just say, no one has done a documentary on Kippy, and that is a very important film that should be made, I think, anyway.
I hear there was a very good play done at the Market Theatre, though. I read an article that was done like 12 years ago.
With great respect, it's not what I'm saying. I'm saying someone needs to do a film on Kippy, seriously. I've spoken to Abdullah Ibrahim about this. He said he would help, and I think someone needs to make that film. Just anyway, carry on.
My dad would tell me the story of Kipu Mwekezi since I was very young, and he described the sense of frustration, of a certain kind of artistry and limits of the South African industry, limits of South African socio-cultural space, expression space, limits of what people, identity politics in South Africa and what they allow you to do musically, and those frustrations leading to his demise.
Yeah.
And destroying, one of South Africa's...
A global thinker that was stuck in a box.
Apartheid state, like where he couldn't move. They fucked up his papers. He had things to play in different places, but they wouldn't let him move, and they choked him until he drank himself to death. I thought, fuck, no. I thought, no, I don't want to. At that time when I was starting the thing, it was like emphatic tabs on a kind of underground vibe. It was squatter camp on another kind. It was like H2O on a vibes, and I pitch black afro, and I didn't.
Wow, I haven't heard that name in such a long time. Yeah,
he committed a murder. Like
I remember.
Yeah, he's locked up for that. But at that time, 98, 90, the late 90s, I did not want to do that. It was almost the year 2000, and I was hearing these other sounds and possibilities, but I knew that wouldn't be a viable, creative lane just in South Africa. So I knew that, I had to find some avenues.
And you mentioned your father.
What was your vibe like? What was your vibe in the late 90s? Did you feel like, what were you listening to, and did you feel a creative thing that was like fucking year 2000, 2001. Because in hip hop, like rules were being broken. You know, there was real like Company Flow, Anti-Pop Consortium, Anticon. It was about really deconstructing the thing and breaking it. And
in 1999, look, I was there. Look, I was in Mlungu on campus radio, obsessed with what was happening in the music scene. But to be fair, I wasn't. I was. There was a revolution happening in rock music as well. So like it was Nude Girls territory, and it was Sugar Drive territory, and all those guys who were shaking up the scene from the other side, and I was very deep in that.
that was the year 2000. The Springbok Nude Girl was the year 2000.
It's fine. Yeah, Nude Girls were like 96, 99, 2000. Blue Eyes.
2000, bro. 2000 is another era from 96, bro.
No, but 2000 was when around 2000 was when 1999, 2000 was when Blue Eyes came out, and that was a revolution. Do you remember the song Blue Eyes?
No, I've got no idea about
that. Was a song that changed the world forever. It was a song that the Nude Girls, who were the first kind of band we thought had global appeal, wrote a song about murder, like a song about a father murdering his family. You know, it was and in my world at the time that seemed important. You know, I mean, I'm being deadly honest. I'm not. That's what was going on.
I need to take a moment for the nudies. I don't really get the nudies.
But you know, here's the thing: that the nudies were, you know, you're talking about a time where in your youth, when songs defined who you were, you know, that so it's you can't go back now and listen to them and go, what was, you know, some music doesn't age so well, but when you lived it, you know, when you were there, it defined the moment in your life, and the nudies were iconic, whether you like them or not. You know, whether you like the Rolling Stones or hate them, you cannot deny the part they played in history for that particular thing. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, you can play some young guy, Jay Dilla, and he'll say, well, what's cool about this? And your answer is, well, you don't fucking understand because you weren't listening to it when you were supposed to listen to it.
I don't know, man. For me, I feel like I listened to rock from before the Nude Girls, after the Nude Girls, around the Nude Girls.
Okay, so who did you rate from that world then?
I don't South African.
Because I mean, we're talking about. I mean, there were a lot of bands for a small period of time. It was the sort of golden era. There were a lot of bands.
Name, please.
So like Squeal from Durban, Sugar Drive from Joburg. There was B World from Cape Town. There was Lithium from Cape Town. There was, well, Just Ginger, who were a pop band from Joburg. You remember Just Ginger? You don't? Wow, really not?
No, I mean, I was there, but remember how tribal the 90s were?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. You asked me the question. Who are you? Okay, so what's your 99, 2000? You were just saying.
I think interestingly, after that, I think like, when was it? Like 2005, a friend of mine, Angie, gave me a cassette, and it kind of put me onto a lot of really dope rock music. And,
what was on that cassette?
A cassette that had one cassette that had The Clash, The Smiths.
Oh, okay. So that's not South African rock, though. You're talking about
No. But I had never heard any of it. It was the first time hearing this charming man, or hearing, you know what I mean, or hearing the Pixies all on one cassette on a 60-minute CD. It was very fun, explosive experience, and influenced a lot of stuff. She gave me then like gigs and gigs of music that, you know, put me onto vibes.
And a weird question, I'm sure you get asked, but I read somewhere years ago that you related to Jonas Gwangwa. Is that real? Is that true?
Yes, yes.
So first of all, I'm sorry for your loss because that's a massive loss. But what influence did he have on you, if any?
No, he's my father's cousin, and he's always been the pride of the family, the absolute pride of the family. And for me, obviously, he's a great inspiration. And to hear the stories about the jazz epistles, and like you said, Dollar Brand and Kipu Market, and yeah, it's incredible. But I regret that it's only in my later years that I really,
Got to appreciate him.
took strong. No, I mean, I always appreciated, but it was kind of distant, nervous. But after actually researching the stuff, I just had to know some things, okay.
What did you want to? What did you ask? What did you want to know? Because this. I mean, for me, again, another overlooked thing. One of the greatest albums ever made out of, well, it wasn't even made out of this country, which is unfortunate, but Union of South Africa, that album, which it's very hard to find, but him and Caiaphas and Hugh is one of the greatest pieces of music for me that I've ever heard, because they just managed to do a very cool integration of turning really traditional African sounds into something that was globally palatable in a very fucking smart and cool way. And every track on that thing is gold.
Yeah, what I wanted to know, I guess I asked him first just about their relationships, and to hear that actually him and Hugh Masekela had known each other since they were 15, and they got their horns on the same day, and they relate. And just to hear about, they got their horns from Trevor Huddleston, the Reverend Trevor Huddleston, on the same day, and to hear how their relationship developed and the dynamics, and how that influenced the course of musical history, just personal dynamics of two guys who've known each other since they're 15, and just what that means, everything that you go through, good and bad,
And what do you take from that?
I mean, it was even matter to hear about his experiences with Botswana and the sacrifice he made of kind of leaving the gloss of the commercial music industry to be musical director for the ANC's, kind of morale boost in exile. And that kind of sacrifice and the accidents and the sabotage and bombings, he's a big inspiration for the passion, the drive, and the commitment to the people, to the people, to his people, and to the people. Even in his musical form and the construction. And for us as a man, we're Ndebele. We're Ndebeles from Limpopo. And we're a very minority group, our language isn't even one of the official, it's not even one of the 11 official languages. And when that commission was run in 93 and 92, it didn't, make the list, along with, some other languages like Isipata, Isihlubi, Isiphuti. And he worked to put our language on a world stage through his music, on very big historical, inspiring level, that inspires me to do the same thing, because it's important to when language dies, culture dies, a lot of the people's sensibility and their their technology, the things that they developed, the systems that they developed through eons, die with the expression that dies.
I mean, it's interesting to me that I don't know if it's in your blood or if it's part of your family, but when I track your work and I think about, even albums like Tales from the Lost Cities and I think about one of the things that in my mind, because I'm a big fan of a lot of what Jonas Gwangwa did in terms of the fact that those oaks were kind of working at a different level. They were very much masters of what they were doing. Like everything was really up here. And often with your stuff, I don't know what you're doing. I'm a musician and I have no idea what you're up to, but I recognize in your work, the artistry is way up there, that you aren't working in the same hemisphere that a lot of other artists that I listen to do. And I think that's true for Jonas and Hugh and that caliber of artists as well. Is this like, how are you, what was your upbringing?
That's very humbling, high praise, man. I can't even can't do anything with that.
Well, I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm just saying it's interesting. I don't, you are quite a tough nut to crack, because like a lot of many great artists, when you express yourself in the work that you do, you say so much, but trying to actually unpack it in a conversation is not so easy. But I do I don't know what I don't know what you do. It's very interesting to me, and I do see that similarity between the two of you. I'm just trying to understand like what your headspace is when you're creating, when you're making Tales from Lost Cities, when you're working. I mean, your new album, what's it, Hikikimoro, making it Japanese is it Hikikimoro Blue, which is a beautiful album and really like emotion. It's like it makes me very emotional, some of the tracks on there, and I have no fucking idea what you're up to, but I'm obsessed with every step you take.
That's what I was talking about being on the edge. I think it's also me not knowing, what. Like, there's some things that for years I've thought, this is what I should do, this is what would be a very good professional move, and I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I'll keep it in mind. But I won't necessarily want to do something like that, that cozy, that comfy. And I enjoy the experiments. I enjoy learning. I enjoy growing. With Hikikimori Blue, it was at some point.
You say it so much easier than I can.
It just
Hikikimori Blue.
Yeah.
It's a Japanese word, right?
Yeah, it's a documentary that I saw during the lockdown, and it kind of encapsulated lockdown from hermits over there that live the hermit lifestyle out of choice in general in their lives, to it being imposed on all of us. It kind of, encapsulated that mood quite perfectly. But musically, I heard Ganawa for the first time. I heard Ganawa for the first time, and it just blew my mind. And it was a time when I was going through a lot of like panic and weird physical feelings. And I got this experience where hearing about the functionality of Ganawa, that it's not like commercial secular music, that it's a therapeutic music, that people will come to your house for 3 nights in a row and perform ceremony, and that's what the band is, that's what the music is. They're prayers, they're all traditional songs, but they're also prayers. So when I listen to it and I research the different songs, because there's specific folk songs that are repeated by different people who come and sing, you get, for me, I got peace, I got calm in this time of panic and stress. I got so much calm, and I wanted to share that kind of calm that I got from that one side. then boof, on another side, I heard these stripped down 60s Jamaican, like just drum and bass tracks, tracks of just drums and bass and, scratch or someone dubbing it up. And the feeling of calm that I got from stripped down bass as well, it was really therapeutic. And so I kind of put those two together, the Ganawa Gimbri and kind of a dubby bass. And songs about heartbreak, yeah.
Yeah, there's some mad shit on there. And cool. When you're making an album, do you know, or where do you start from your side? Are you writing songs, or are you looking for sounds? You're looking for inspiration? Are you experimenting in the studio? Do you know you're starting an album, or is it just something you're always messing with and going, okay, well, now I'm obviously...
Like I'm saying, with this, the start of the album was the crisis and panic attacks I was having. And the album was how I solved, the music and the frequencies of the album was how I solved the problem that I was having.
Wow.
That's that album. With the Tales from the Lost Cities, the same thing. You can hear Tales from the Lost Cities like very topical. And South Africa's always going through like, crisis and high panic and commission here, commission there. At the time, there was like the Land Commission, the Zondo Commission was starting. There were some other corruption commissions from just some old cases were coming up. And I had this memory of how early 90s and mid 90s hip hop for me, I've got a brother who's 10 years older than me. So from the time that I was 5 years old, I knew the difference between, Tribe Called Quest and Ice-T. I remember how that music could tell an era, it felt like CNN. It didn't feel like candy bullshit. It could tell. The time was intense and you could tell from the music. And, that gets lost sometimes. And I think in South African hip hop right now, you can't feel the South Africa that, if you switch on the news, you can't hear that in what hip hop is. The sense that it's the CNN of the streets, as Public Enemy said, is lost.
I fucking love that, because that is some deep insight into how I feel. I look at your albums and that's why I was trying to understand. Your albums are a sign of the times. They're very politically poignant and musically.
Tales from the Lost Cities. I was specifically trying to do Tales from the Lost Cities. It was, as a rapper, I was trying to do my first exercise in storytelling more. As a beat maker, as a producer, I was trying to do an exercise in my first hip hop project ever. But that's the funny thing. I've come in as a rapper from time, but I'm a rapper who's always rapped on non-hip hop beats, non-traditional hip hop beats. So I wanted to do a hip hop project as I remember it.
Cool. When did you first start having panic attacks? Is that something you've always had, or was the pandemic the beginning of that?
Actually blame the poison. I blame Dacha. I think it's just the cause and effect of using something to be calm. So when you don't have the thing you use to be calm, you won't be calm. Yeah. So it was from times of being like, no, I'm going to stop smoking.
Have you stopped smoking now then?
This is hectic. But then I listened to bass, just like a thick bass with some good reverb, and it gave me the sensation of the most beautiful high, and I was fine, soothed, happy.
I found your vice. It's bass.
Hey. No, Dacha's definitely my vice.
Okay. Fine. That's cool.
And bread. And
bread.
bread. And bread.
Bread is
I can resist it.
bread is evil.
Have you been to Mozambique? Have you seen
Yeah.
how they get down over there?
Oh shit. Can you tell me a little bit about what was growing up in Soweto like for you in the, I don't know how old you are, the
80s and early 90s.
80s and 90s, yeah.
I was born the year the state of emergency started. So from first 5 years, the image of like tanks and, military presence was a normal, scary thing. And, my first childhood nightmares were figures like Eugene Blanche and, military people.
Were you one of the kids who used to stand on the side of the road and throw rocks at the tanks? Or were you cowering in the house going, for me, I'm going to...
No fucking way. No fucking way. There's a terror. And then bigger fear later became the early 90s, and Nkatha Freedom Party was super duper. There was, a young civil war throughout Gauteng and Ekurhuleni, to KwaZulu a lot as well. But we felt it. We really felt it in Soweto, And that was scary because it was at any point in any street, driving to school, from school, your car could get stopped and attacked. Police cars, what's it called? Roadblocks were also frequent, which was scary in themselves. It should have been calming, but at that time, police roadblocks were scary. But roadblocks by some random vigilantes were scary. The late 80s, early 90s were not. I mean, on the flip side, the childhood was awesome. Of riding bikes, the community, the culture, the community, the people. It's always beautiful, but it's just mad circumstance that made that era bullshit. It was an era of death. Like people were getting hacked up with machetes, things were burnt. It was bullshit.
I mean, other than that being super traumatic, do you have an opinion on the state of the nation today? You don't have to answer that either. I'm just interested.
I think the state of the nation is it's going to keep burning until the fundamental problems get fixed,
What are the fundamental problems?
You know what the fundamental problems are. We've got the biggest wealth gap in the world, We've got the biggest rates of sexual violence in the world. We've got high unemployment rates.
What the fuck? Just lost him. I think the government's listening. They don't like this. The government doesn't want this conversation to happen.
The ANC locked off the tin. They're
monitoring, bro.
Yeah. No, the state of the country is just because everyone's pissed. Everyone's pissed and getting more pissed, and everyone feels like validated in being pissed and aggressive and quite crazy as well. But it's making a lot of problems worse on one side. On another side, it also makes people feel like just fuck the system. If I'm working for the system, I can destroy it from the inside because I don't care. Fuck the system. If I'm outside the system, I don't really care. I can, like everybody in Gauteng is involved in like corruption with the police. Like we complain about corruption, but we're also paying the police to get us out of trouble. You know what I mean? We're complicit in it, although we hate it. But until we fix the basic problems of why people, then it's going to keep being so crazy. But the state of SA, it's mad. But culturally, it's beautiful. Like creatively, it's fantastic. Wow. But the fuck ups in things like the fuck ups in the economy even mean that a lot of our creators like leave and have to leave, you know? The industry can't
Your
support certain, yeah?
particularly in music, actually.
You know, and visual art even on another level.
Yeah.
Because people are like, fuck it, I can just go to London. With music, as a musician, if you go to London, you're probably going to wait tables or something. But if you're an illustrator, you go there, you're going to draw. You know, the people are leaving and crazy. I was working on an animation project and trying to actually scout illustrators, concept artists, character artists, and so many people are gone. Berlin, London, what.
Ish, what do we do about it? I don't know. We just, you rap about it. Or what do you do?
I left the country because of the same thing. I felt when I first left, it was that there was more economic opportunity, you know. And on another level, like my dad is in his 70s now. He's been working in England since the late 90s. No, he first worked in Australia for like 10 years, then he moved to England.
What does your dad do?
He works in IT. He's like a programmer and an analyst. And he kind of left because he also felt in his business, in his position where he was, he felt cornered and didn't have the options that were being offered outside the country in the country. But you can't run away. And I've also clocked that when the shit goes down, like now, the popa are dancing now. The shit is going down with the situation. The biggest thing that you have to rely on is home.
Yeah.
In terms of business, as a musician, touring is kind of fucked. So you have to, the home market is like, I mean, streaming and that is super important. Online is super important, of course, and that's global. But I think home market is going to be more, especially with conditions for travel changing. And now you're going to need like a vaccination passport. It's not going to be as easy as a musician to travel as it was before. Think about you were in a band in the late 90s. Going to England then as a South African, it was like piece of piss.
Easy, yeah. Ours was 2005 to 2009 was nothing. Or expensive. Other than expensive, it was really easy.
And even then, it was already tighter because it was after the 9/11 shit, you know?
Yeah.
But this is gonna, just for musicians, it's gonna. So my point is that we can't just moan about home. We need to work on fixing home. In all ways that we know. A big one for me in music, I can't fix all the systemic South African crazy problems, but in music, it's to educate and create infrastructure for myself first, because like I say, I had signed and did some very ignorant things in the early stages of my career, but as well as developing a structural framework for myself, help other musicians that aren't as fortunate or informed to have more access to information and opportunities now.
I mean, let me ask you early on we were talking about the Isaac Mutant documentary, which I still love that you're doing. And early on, you kind of just said, oh, it's a nice story that needs to be told. But if you are, as you seem to be, interested in the betterment of the industry and the education of music people, isn't this an important story to be telling for that reason and others?
Yes, absolutely. No, you weren't understanding me. What I was saying was that with
I
Isaac
found it being
Newton.
quite hostile, to be honest.
No. It's just for you to see the film
Yeah.
and also know some of the motivation for making it.
Yeah.
There's kind of a friend and I, Lebogang Rasataba and I, we experienced and spoke about a schism between the Black and colored community nationally and in the Western Cape in particular. And
Ooh, it's big here.
and it was interesting talking to Isaac as someone whose mother is Sotho and father, his mother, identified fully as Sotho and father identified as colored. And you know what I mean? That in part he has an aspect of himself. He even says that in the 80s he was involved in the Cape Flats student resistance struggle, and the Black consciousness movement told him that he was Black, and he's been Black and he's felt Black. And after 94, he was made colored again. And it was to find a pride and creation in that. But now, politically, he's realizing what the implications are. So it was this conversation, as well as a recognition of the fact that in the 80s, a big genesis of South African hip hop that must continuously be recognized and given credence is Mitchell's Plain as a kind of ground zero for the graffiti writers, break dancers, scratch DJs, and rappers. And yeah, this film is the storm of all of that, as well as what you're saying about it being an important story because of, the obvious reason of, educating about an important musical figure that people need to know more about. But there's a very deep, I think a much deeper conversation in it all that he also confronts with his music. In, like in all the gnarly, crazy, dark, he's saying a lot of things.
Yeah.
That maybe because of the lack of subtlety and because of the shouting, some things get missed. But he's saying a lot of very deep things about the state of the country that are sometimes maybe scary to look at directly.
Aren't you doing that as well? Your music isn't
Sometimes I also make rave.
That's my point.
Yeah.
That's the same point I'm making, is that you make very bold statements, but they're hidden in the artistry of what you're creating. I'm not saying you're shouting the stuff like Dacoom, but it's in there. You got to find it though. It's not easy to find. For me, it's not easy to find. Yeah. I was listening.
14-year boy with Kalashnikov gun, AK-47 like a toy for the fun. It's like, you know what I mean? It's not subtle.
Yeah.
And that's actually something that, for you, you're saying that it's been too subtle, but for me, I've struggled with the goal of striving for like a softer hand in some things, even if it's in the sound of my drums or, the tone of tones or, you know what I mean?
On Hikimoto Blue, there's a track called No More Walking Alone. And I don't know what it is. That piece is it's like a beautiful piece of work that's sort of amplified to overdrive. It's instrumental, I think, but it's fucking powerful and it says a lot, and it's in the title. So and I think I don't know what I'm even saying. I love that you're able to you maybe you're being overt, but to the average fan, you got to explore. You got to look through everything to find what you're doing. It's not obvious to. I think you're obviously, and again, I think we've only met twice before. I'm sure you are obviously highly smart, intellectual, artist who has a lot of levels there. I'm just someone who listens to your albums all the time and goes and really gravitates towards them and has to figure out what you're trying to say.
Mm.
Anyway.
I'm very touched and very humbled that you even heard "No More Walking Alone." You know, it for me. I really see I'm so happy and so in love with that song, and so happy and so in love with the song that's just after that. Like, I see the progression of my musical career as a lot of growth, to the point where I'm so much happier with what I've been able to do over the last 6 years. I can say since the Phantasma project, since the Phantasma album, that was like the first time I was like, whew, okay, you know, like, oh, I can listen to this and I love this. Like, oh, I'm so proud of this. And after that, it's more and more. And No More Walking Alone it's like, it's very emotional. It's this kind of joy of feeling that freedom that, you know.
I love that tune. All right. Okay.
There used to be some singing on it saying "No More Walking Alone," but it's
the artistic desire for subtlety. You see, this is what I'm talking about.
yeah.
the desire to not be obvious. It's in you. Okay, you're not responding to that. You just.
No. No,
I feel like I must be honest. Before I let you go, I've got only 2 more questions. I feel like I offend you. Almost everything I say to you is offensive to you.
No, not at all. There's just a glitch.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
in life or on the internet?
No, we hear.
Okay, this is a hard question, but I want to understand this. Your life path is so interesting. It doesn't emulate. It doesn't. There's nobody else I know who has had a career like yours. Is there a moment or a pain or an obstacle or something that maybe you had to overcome that turned you into the artist that you are, put you on the path that is the Spoek Mathambo path?
Yeah, I think very much the death and suicide of my cousin at 13 years old made me write a short story in high school about a kid that dies, and his name is Spoek Mathambo. And the Spoek Mathambo, the first album, was like, not the first, it was never released. It was just creative ideas that I had. It was kind of the fantastic dream that he has as he dies. You know, that's very, that's an expression of a lot of teenage pain, and, you know, that created that story, which created some other ideas and concepts, and, you know, became this creative light to this really dark memory that I had. But eventually in my music, I was able to, like, I think when I can have a tendency to do quite gothic stuff. And my big transcendence in music has been growing out of the pain of that big loss that I had when I was 13. And for me, it's expressed in a lot of sounds that I can make now, you know, that isn't a lot of feelings that I can express now that aren't solely based on a dark, you know, a shadow, a darkness, you know, or a dark feeling, or whatever. But I suppose something that I did, like with Marcus Wormstorm back in the day, Sweatex, that wasn't dark at all. That was like really party music. And I need to say that in this interview that I've made a shitload of very like apolitical, very, very party music, you know, from Swedex to Baduk, which we started as a Afro house concept, and you know, we've been able to go to different places and share that.
Is there someone you'd still love?
My point is that, yeah, so some of that pain that created the creative impetus to do Spoek Mathambo in this way, I think I've really been able to work through creatively, successfully work through creatively.
Is there someone that you would love to collaborate with, and you don't just have to say me? And is there someone you still are dying to collaborate globally, locally? Is there a project you still think that you would is the big goal?
What are you cooking up over there? You cooking up music? Is that a music studio also?
Yeah, this is a music studio, and but
show me around. What are you cooking over there?
Avoid the question.
What's popping? What's popping?
You answer mine, and I'll answer yours.
I'm gonna answer your question. Just give me one short idea into what you're recording in there. What do you record?
Well, this okay. Well, in a short thing, this is a music studio. So this is my composing studio. My real studio. I mean, do you know have you heard of Amped Studios?
Yeah.
That's my baby. It took me 8 years to put that thing together. And this was always my dream, to build a culture hub for young emerging artists in South Africa. This is just my little play studio to make projects, but that's where I spend a lot of my time. That's where is it? That's Sipho Hot Sticks Mabusa on our launch day, sitting in our studio the day we launched. I've got, yeah, I know, that's my little story. Originally this was a radio station that we started 5 years ago called The Eye as well, to try and give a space for, I don't know how to say what I'm about to say.
John?
I'm about to say that it's very weird. I work with a lot of people. It's very difficult being, I don't know how, I'm just being totally raw and honest with you. So take it from where it comes. Like, being a white guy who's really trying to protect African culture sounds really pretentious and disingenuous, but it has been something I'm very, very deeply involved in, and trying to bring ownership to projects in Africa. That's what I really is the passion for my work. So the iRadio was built to do that, but it failed miserably. But this podcast, weirdly, I started this podcast for fun during lockdown, and this podcast has gone fucking bananas all around the world. And all it is,
you hit the perfect time as well.
Whiskey infused conversations with people I really.
Tell me this. I've got something that I'm interested to ask you. Speaking about heritage, from a hip hop perspective, people think hip hop is a genre or a sound, but it's more, I guess, a set of cultural practices or methods. You know, so one of the methods is pulling back from a moment, is time travel. Is pulling back from a moment 30 years ago to bring it into this, but with the culture of now, aka sampling. And how the sonics of people's parents influence new moments, as well as reinvigorated many careers that were absolutely obscure and dead. You know, things were able to be really brought into the public consciousness.
Revitalized. But
revitalized. So the point is, some things are like, you know, sampled 7 billion times. And it's sad when people aren't able to benefit from that. I guess America kind of had its sample golden era in the 80s and the late 80s, before the law clamped down on people very hard. And South Africa's industry has only really boomed since the late 90s, after copyright law and the clamping down of samples was quite hard. but I think that is a strong way of bringing a reverence, a respect for the past that is ingrained in folk music by re-singing folk songs, but a lot of folk and re-singing of songs has been lost. And I think hip-hop also had that aspect of bringing back important figures and important moments.
It's very romantic to talk about it, but I have noticed something about South African hip-hop, and that is, I've just done a project now that I feel is highly unrecognized. I have nothing to do with it. I'm not saying it's my project that has been unrecognized, but we did something at AMP that I felt needed more recognition, and that is, I think South African hip hop stars actually sample the great music a lot, but they actually don't know what the fuck they're sampling. They don't actually know the original tracks. So one of the things, this is just my opinion, right? You can feel free to disagree, but I noticed, for example, that like Matswale, one of the greatest songs ever, has been sampled by like 50,000 hip hop stars, but people don't know Matswale, the history of Matswale, how that track came about, why it's important, what it's actually singing about.
No, but come on, that's not true. That's not true, and that's not fair. Every single hip hop artist who sampled it would have grown up with the song very much and understands what the song is about culturally.
I don't know about that. I think that everyone grew up listening to that song. So,
and I can say very blanketly of being of a certain age, your parents absolutely, you know what I mean? Everyone has grown up with it as a, the way some people, like, I never heard Hey Jude until I was like 24, 5. Like I had, you know what I mean? But Matswale is something you hear when you 1 years old, 2 years old.
Let me tell you, we did this project again. We did this project where we redid Matswale, and it's the first time Kaipa Semenya has ever allowed people to redo it.
Sorry, but also I'm speaking way too boldly for younger people. I can't speak for everyone much younger.
So everybody, so we brought in younger artists, older artists, we brought in a whole lot of artists to sing on the track. We also brought in Kaipa Semenya to
Big C.
No. Yeah, Big C. Not to just to give context. And it was confirmed for me that so many people discovered the song for the first time, but they knew the chorus, they knew Matswale, they knew the song, but they didn't know the song at all. And that was interesting. I don't know. So
no, I mean, education is always beautiful. You always, like, I can say people know things, but you know what I mean? Like the expression "you only know so much" sounds so glib and stupid, but it's true. You only know to like that much until you know a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And your platforms offer people to know a bit more and a bit more. That's
I mean,
it.
I take your point. Your point is that this idea of sampling is a way to bring these great legacy artists back into the mainstream.
That for the 80s.
I don't see it happening.
For the 80s, it brought back things. No, I'm saying that for the 80s, it brought back things from the 60s and 70s, and to today, people have careers, like staunch careers, publishing careers, as well as live performance careers off what it's done, right? And I'm speaking about outside the country. But what I'm saying is, I think it's a missing link. I don't think it was ever done here.
Right.
And I don't think it's done. And I'm saying, like, technically, the hip hop industry boomed almost after the sample era, and it became about doing more keyboard based things, as well as different kind of chops of samples. It wasn't about loops anymore. It became about like a different kind of production.
If I look at the great legacy artists like the Mahotella Queens, who do get sampled quite a bit, or the guys who don't get sampled so much, I'm doing a lot of work with Pops Muhammad, for example. And here's what this is what really fucks me off, is that Pops Muhammad, in my opinion, you know, is one of the most what he's done for music is, whether it's pop culture or not, is been incredible. He lost, like, during lockdown, lost all his money. Then he lost his son during lockdown. I don't think anyone, to your point about Dakum, I don't think anyone has really valued / told Pops Muhammad's story. When he's gone, all his fucking stories, his warehouse of dat tapes of the history of South African music dies with him. I wish there was a way, and maybe sampling is the way, that we could make a lot of these guys, or help a lot of these guys back into the limelight. These guys all good.
There's been a big global hype and storm in this kind of last 10 years of vinyl resurgence of South African bubblegum as a genre that's become very like hip to collect in America and in France, and people are reissuing, some people are bootlegging stuff.
Yeah, like Pops' album Black Disco, he's looking at doing a remake of it now with Femi Kuya. So yeah, I mean, but these guys are like, they can't afford to feed themselves. Never mind make an album. That's why they're all recording at Ant right now. I've just thrown them all in there and said, "Fucking use this place."
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. That if there was an entire sound that was based on Pops Muhammad, because Pops Muhammad has his sonic concept. So if there's a derivative sound based on Pops Muhammad's sonic concept, it immediately gives reverence to Pops Muhammad's sonic concept. In the same way that like dubstep people still give respect to Lee Scratch Perry, and he'll, you know what I mean, or Large Professor will play at and it's like a next generation sound, but it's based on what the thing did. Yeah, man. I love doing tribute projects, and I've done them for a long time. I got a lot of eyes when I did the Control, the Joy Division cover, and that was part of a much bigger project, all with kind of post-punk covers that I did, or groups like Suicide, and I did all kinds of groups, and it's something that I love as from the thing that I'm saying of what folk songs have always been, that it's something you learn and something you pass on, and that it's songs giving life and new life, and what we've experienced of even when Kurt Cobain sings like, my love, won't you come to me? Tell me, where did you sleep last night? And Lead Belly singing that.
Lead Belly song, yeah.
By the time Lead Belly had sung it, it was already like, had an much older folk history. And I love that kind of cultural communication, and I'd love that to happen more. And I think, like I say, I think hip hop is a cultural should be a cultural technology to do that. But what I'm trying to say is I think it's been lost. That aspect of it has been lost. That it was fundamental to it to know all the artists, so that you can find the most obscure things to create something new in reverence of that. But you have to know secret. You know what I mean? It's like a very deep thing of knowing and having a very precise secret knowledge of things, in a way as not to be caught. It's a game. People don't get that. It's the same as graffiti. The same way that people go out at night to tag and write chains. Catching secret breaks is the same as catching tags.
Do you think that, I mean, it seems to me that the whole world is kind of, I mean, this is going to sound glib, but they're kind of bored of their own shit, and they're looking at Africa for catalog, for sampling, for ideas, for music. Do you think there is a potentially global revival of this traditional, well, I don't know if traditional is the right word, but this legacy music?
Like I've said from the beginning of this interview, I think the world always uses Africa as a creative lifeblood, you know, the way that Picasso saw, you know, statues, Congolese statues, and that influenced him into concepts that he created. It's a creative lifeblood that continuously the rest of the world needs for fun. Even our diaspora feeds, and it's a feedback loop that goes around. I don't think that ever dies. But in what you're saying about Pops Muhammad really kind of sorry, it puts me in my head and kind of depresses and touches me.
I'm starting a record label with him just to fucking get his new shit out.
Is it?
I believe motherfucking record labels should be paying Pops Muhammad for his stories, his
what
owns the entire back catalog. He owns the entire thing back 50 years, 60 years. His new albums that he recorded, nobody's interested.
Right.
Fuck him.
Are you sure? Okay, I'm gonna put you in contact with someone that might be interested. I'm gonna put you in contact. I'm gonna put you in contact with a business partner of mine that's been very helpful with publishing things and sync licensing, and yeah. Is his market like a very jazz? No, that's the thing. He's like not really in the jazz.
He's not in jazz. He's kind of in world, to be fair, but he plays in a lot of markets. And his the value is his back catalog is with everyone. Everyone you can imagine. He's done collabs with. He's actually got we've been approached by like a lot of DJs in the grime market in the UK. And what's also interesting is he's the guy who went into the desert with the sand and the koi and recorded those music that is sampled by DJs all over. Like any sample you hear of traditional Bushmen are from Pops. He went in there and learned their instrument and spoke to them and lived with them and made those recordings.
Yeah, I've got some of those.
So fucking the guy can't feed himself. It's intolerable to me that. And again,
that's the music business, unfortunately.
It's not only him. This is the worst part. Sorry, you've got me going now, but I'm agreeing with you.
But that's where you talk about apartheid. That for like I work with Vogaz Tata, who's a Maskandi musician from Shula close to Port Shepstone, and he left school, I think in standard 3 or standard 4, to work when his pops passed away. But he, like internet and online and marketing and promotion online, he doesn't do at all, you know. He got WhatsApp like recently. And in a world moving forward, you get left behind and you become economically obsolete, you know. And that is also a big reality that we deal with, that we have highly skilled people in skills that are kind of just obsolete in this new world.
Just a side note on that note, have you heard the new Open Village album?
Yes.
Fucking hell. Come on. Yeah. What are those guys doing? It's crazy.
Yeah. I remember that the guitarist used to be part of BCUC.
Right.
Yeah, the flashback of that, crazy. Yes. It's very, very...
They are doing something. I'm in love with what they're doing. And again, to your point, they're historians making music and telling the story.
Exactly.
They're educating, and it's incredible.
Exactly. And what they're doing is they're playing the music. You know what I mean? They're playing the music, but the function... they say the hip-hop grew out of an era when public school music programs were shut down and government spending was pulled. So musicality dropped, but people had record collections and their sense of music was expressed through using other people's music. Urban Village is amazing that they can play their own music, but They're sampling you know what I mean? They're sampling an old concept and they're transporting us back to these very specific eras to educate. And they're even doing some content online, which is very,
Checking it.
yeah, globally educated to what South Africa is and was.
It's a very weird comparison. Do you know the band Tame Impala?
Yes.
I compare them to Tame Impala for Maskandi because they are making sort of the old, you know, Tame Impala take that sort of iconic sound we grew up with in the 80s and making it.
They do Mbakang.
Well, it's a combination. They're doing Bagmanga, they're doing Maskandi.
Maskandi.
Oh yeah, big time.
Maskandi.
Yes, big time. In fact, I think they're more Maskandi focused. Fucking cool. What they're doing is crazy cool.
Yeah.
Tato, I really appreciate your time. This has been over an hour longer than I was anticipating, but I've loved every second chatting to you.
Thank you so much for the chat, man.
Thank you so much for the chat. I really have always wanted to have this chat with you. So for me, this has been a great honor. Thank you.
Salute.
And I will just carry on watching from the sidelines and admiring what you do. And
let's stay in contact. I'm very interested in what you're saying about Pops Muhammad. You know, I'm a big admirer and fan, and maybe some things can pop up.
Good luck with everything you're doing. Good luck with Hikikomori Blues. Hikikomori Blues.
Yeah.
Real love and appreciation for everything you're doing.
Salute. Same to you, man. Thank you very much.